Greetings, I am Tom Earl. On this week's episode, I give you a sneak peek of my TEDx Talk. Conflict is good for you and your relationships. Peace. Greetings, I am Tom Earl, and this is my year of balance. I want to thank you so much for joining me here today. I know you could be anywhere, so the fact that you're here today, I appreciate that. So what we want to do is to align our breathing, our breath, and our intentions. So the way we do that is going through a little exercise, a little breathing exercise. So I want you to start by thinking of what is one intention you have, either for listening to this podcast, for your day, for your week in life. Think of one intention you have. Mine is honesty. My intention is to be honest and truthful. Think of one for yourself. Think of it, and I want you to put your hand on your heart. If you're driving, please do not do that. And breathe in through your nose once. Breathe out. Feel your heart beating. It's the center of the blood movement through your body. It's where it all comes to and then goes back out, pulls it in and out. And so if you start there, if you start with an intention of the heart, all of your blood that goes through it and pumps back out throughout your body, that intention is going to carry with it. So don't just think of it in your mind. Feel it in your heart. Feel it starting there, and all the blood that comes through your heart is infused with that intention. And it travels throughout your legs, to your toes, to your fingertips, to your brain, your ears. Think of that intention just traveling throughout your body. You might even think of it as a certain color, red, blue, purple, and you can just see how when that intention as a color becomes infused with the blood, how slowly your blood changes to the color of that intention until your whole body is pulsing with it. Picture it. Once you once again breathe in through your nose, and this time as you do so, please stretch up. Here we go. Breathe in and release. One more time. Breathe in and release. That felt good. I needed that. Thank you for participating in that with me. That took what? 1 minute and 30 seconds? 2 minutes? 2.5? Every time we do that, we take that 2-minute break. It feels so good. Even for myself, I love having these episodes with you because I know that even myself, it's something I need to work on, and I can take time from my day to do that. So thank you. And I want to start by thanking you once again because today we are going to talk about conflict, how conflict is good for you and your relationships. The thing about that topic is it's the topic for the TED Talk that I'm going to be giving on September 9th. So if you're listening to this when this episode's released, which it came out on September 8th, then you're listening to it the day before the TED Talk. And if you're listening to it after, well then, I've already done it. So the thing about it is it takes a really long time for after it's recorded, after I do the TED Talk, for it to then go onto YouTube for you to see it. I learned that when I did my TEDx Talk in May, and I learned that it's not going to be online until about December. So 2 things I wanted to do is, one, to give you a little insight into what the talk's going to be about. Of course, when I deliver it live with people around and interaction, it's going to be different, so it won't be the same thing. Second is it gives me an opportunity to practice. It's great to be able to, in this live setting right now, to just share it out and see how it feels and if there's anything that comes up as I'm saying it out loud. So, just want to thank you for that opportunity to be able to do that and to share this space. And so, without further ado, let's jump in. The topic, as I said, is on how conflict is good for you and your relationships. What I'd like you to start off by doing is imagining that I have a balloon in my hand and that I blow up the balloon. I blew up the balloon. Okay? Then I tie the balloon to a string, and I tie that string to your ankle. So now if you look down, you have a balloon tied to your ankle. You're thinking, Tom, why do I have this balloon tied to my ankle? Then you look up, and you're in a room with 30 people, and you notice that everyone in the room, like yourself, has a balloon tied to their ankle. And I now give these directions. I say to you, everyone in this room, these 30 people, I say, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to start my stopwatch. I'm going to let my stopwatch count to 30 seconds. The goal is, at the end of the 30 seconds, for your balloon to remain unpopped, completely intact. That is the objective. You have 30 seconds. At the end of the 30 seconds, the whole point is for your balloon to remain intact and unpopped. Any questions? And even if there is questions, I say, however you experience the directions, interpret it however you want. Okay? I feel like my directions are clear enough for you to be able to express yourself however you want. Ready, set, go. And I start the stopwatch. What do you think happens to the room? What is your guess? When I say go, what do you think happens? I want you to think of, what do you do? What would your reaction be if you were in that situation and I said go? Now, I've done this activity live many times, so I really don't have to guess what people would do. It would change a little bit here and there, but there's some predictable reactions that happen. First of all, when I say go, as you might have guessed, pure pandemonium breaks out. Some people are super excited, some people are really afraid, but pandemonium breaks out. But even amongst the chaos, there's about 4 reactions that people's responses can fall into. The first is there's usually some people who are hiding under chairs, or they're cradling their balloon in a fetal position, or they're protecting it, and they're trying to avoid everyone in the room. They are avoiding the chaos and the conflict. The second person is the one who is yielding the power to everyone else in the room. They're either standing there with their balloon out thinking, I don't really care. If you want to pop my balloon, pop my balloon. I'm really not invested in this, or it's too stressful. So they're saying, here, just pop my balloon, get it over with. They're yielding the outcome to the room. The third person is those people who've decided, you know what? I'm better off with a group. And so you start to see little islands of people, maybe 2 people, 3 people, 10 people, 15 people, where they have decided, I won't pop your balloon. If you won't pop my balloon, let's get together. And they're forming their balloons are in the middle of them, and they're all huddled in a circle with their balloons in the middle, and nobody can penetrate their circle, and they're cooperating together. The fourth person is the one who, as soon as they heard the directions, they said, this game was made for me. And they are ready, when I say go, to start popping balloons, maybe even their boss's balloon or a coworker, they have a score to settle, and they are excited about popping balloons. They are the competitive ones. Now, do you hear yourself in any of these reactions? When I started to explain them, did you picture yourself saying, that was me? That would be my reaction. Let me ask you this. Let's say instead of 30 people in a room, and the conflict was to get your balloon to not be popped, or to have your balloon at the end of the activity remain intact. Let's say that was not the conflict. Let's say instead, those same 30 people, the objective is that we need to find, where are we going to go out to eat? And yet, every single person in the room has a different dietary need. Or what if the room, instead of 30 random people, was 30 teachers? And together, the objective is they need to come up with a new tardiness policy. And yet, everyone has a different opinion of what that tardiness policy is. Or what about this? Let's say you have a room full of politicians, all from different political parties. And the objective is we need to create a new healthcare bill. Do you think you would see some of these same reactions we saw during the balloon activity? Would you see people avoiding the conflict? Might you see some people yielding, some people cooperating, and at the same time, some people being competitive? Do you think you would see those same reactions? Now, usually when I'm debriefing this activity with the group, I ask people, how did you respond? And we work through it until we come up with these 4 response styles where everybody starts to say, you're right, that is how the room reacted. But then I say to the group, tell me this, how come most of us decided to interpret the directions as, in order for my balloon to not get popped, I must pop other people's balloons? Tell me about that. Because I didn't see everyone doing it, but I saw the majority of people, or a large portion of the room, interpret the directions as the way to not get my balloon popped is to pop your balloon first. Some people actually didn't even care if their balloon got popped. As long as they could pop other people's balloons, they were happy. And usually when I propose that, the people who went for the popping of the balloons have this confused look on their face. And as we dialogue about the activity, we learn that for the majority of the room, that never occurred to them, that we could complete this activity by actually, when I say go, everybody just remains seated and talk about the weather or what's the latest Netflix episode you're binging. You could have just actually sat still and not a single balloon would have gotten popped and every single person would have met the objective of the activity. Then why is it though that we erupted in chaos and created more trouble for ourselves than there had to be? And that's where we start the conversation. When I'm live with the group and we're talking about conflict, we start it there. Because what this reveals to us is that, yes, it's true that the content of the conflict and the person I'm in conflict with and the circumstances, my level of passion for it, all of these things influence how I'm going to work through the conflict. But one of the biggest contributors to how I will experience conflict is, what are my core beliefs of what conflict is in and of itself? What do I truly believe that conflict means? My answer to that question is going to have a huge influence on how I experience and how I work through conflict. For instance, if I believe that conflict in and of itself creates pain and that it leads to fractured relationships and hurt feelings, if that's my core belief of conflict, I would imagine, and we could probably guess, that person would probably avoid conflict because it sounds like something painful and we try to avoid pain at all costs. Or what if I thought that conflict at its core was a game of winners and losers? Might I work through that conflict competitively? That would be my guess. And so we find this truth here, that what is my core belief of conflict? And that's what we're going to do here today, is I want to invite you to reflect upon your core beliefs of what conflict means to you. And my invitation is to consider what I believe, which is that conflict is good for you and your relationships. But I'm not here to just throw that out there and say, believe what I believe. Instead, I'm going to offer you 3 things to consider towards that point. And at the end, we can reflect upon what are the possibilities of if we as a group, if we as a people, we as a world believed this about conflict. My first invitation for consideration, the first thing I'd like for you to consider is to view conflict as an opportunity. Because conflict itself is neither negative nor positive. Rather, it is a neutral opportunity. And it's up to us. We get to decide what is it an opportunity for. Now, when we view it like this, rather than seeing it as always leading to one thing or the other, we can recognize that when we experience conflict, the power is in our hands. We get to decide, how will I work through this conflict? How will I use it as an opportunity towards the objective, the mission, the vision I have for my life and for my community? Now, I know this is a hard thing to reflect upon, so I want you to, for a second, think about, when was a time you had a disagreement with somebody and the way you worked through the disagreement actually brought you closer to that person? Think of a time where maybe you were in sometimes we have misunderstandings, or it was something somebody said, but you had a disagreement. And it might have been hard to bring up, and it might have been hard to work through, but because you worked through it together so compassionately, the relationship became stronger because of the conflict. Has that ever happened to you? I think for all of us, we might have experienced something like that, where we turned that conflict from becoming something negative. We use it as an opportunity to grow in relationship with somebody. I know for myself, this was a hard thing for me to grasp, because there have been many times where I have had serious conflict with somebody to the point where I wanted to be like, I just wanted to verbally let them have it. One of the times that I think of that comes to mind is I was working for Community Tampa Bay when I was in AmeriCorps Vista, and I was serving at their Anytown program, which brings diverse high school students together, usually about 100 at a time. And we stay on a college campus for 5 nights and 6 days. So we're together, we're immersed in this culture together. And the whole point is to talk about our biases and to create a world free from discrimination. And so we were on the second day, and I was in a small group, maybe a group of about 10 people with the high school students. And we were talking about our biases and beliefs that we have. And one young person, he was 14, he yelled out to the group, and I want to brace you, this is going to be troubling what he yells. So he yelled out to the group that, if my son was gay, I would pay someone to rape him, and if that didn't set him straight, I would kill him. And so you can imagine, I'm sitting in this group, and this young person says this horrible thing, and I am pissed off, I am angry, I am scared, I am feeling a lot of things right now. You can hear it in my voice. And the last thing I wanted to do was to see this as an opportunity. I wanted to, in front of this group, let this young person have it, especially because there were people laughing. They thought it was funny. And I could tell from the smile he had on his face that this was something he said before and has gotten a similar reaction from a group. But instead, I remembered, because we were trained on how to dialogue about these things, and that we had a specific intention of this dialogue to get the young people to name their biases. And I knew that if I was to verbally let him have it, that what he would do was call my bluff and say, or call me out on my lie. He would say, you said you wanted me to talk about my biases. Now I am. You're screaming at me. So what I'm going to do is what I do for all adults, is I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to give you the answer that I know you want to hear, and secretly continue thinking these things. I know that's what would happen if I yelled at him. And so instead, I trusted the process. So of course, I didn't let it go. We continued the dialogue, and we continued the process throughout the week, where we continued to invite these young people to reflect upon, where do my beliefs come from? Because a 14-year-old doesn't start thinking that out of the blue. They don't come out of the womb thinking those horrible homophobic thoughts. It's taught, it's a process. And there's also processes to bring that to our self-awareness. And so I found that as we went throughout the week, it was the 4th day, and we were doing an LGBTQ workshop with the entire group of about 80 to 100 young people. And it's a really powerful workshop where a lot of people start to realize what's really going on. They start to hear different stories than what they have been told their whole life. And so this young person, the same one, almost towards the end of the workshop, raises his hand. And as you can imagine, I'm thinking, oh God, here we go again. Raises his hand, and he stands up, and he's kind of choked up. He's kind of got tears in his eyes. And he said, I want to admit, I'm ashamed to say that earlier this week, I said a lot of things that I wish I never said, and that I have been a person who has discriminated against LGBTQ people. And starting today, I'm never going to do that again. And I want to own what I have done. And moving forward, I want to be an advocate and an ally for people who are LGBTQ and be a leader in my community to end bullying. And I was like, whoa. And the whole room was just shocked, because we've heard what this person thought. And I'm really happy to say that I saw that he stuck to his word, because when he got back to school that year, we saw how he joined the Gay Straight Alliance, and all throughout his high school career, he spoke out against homophobia, and he really worked to end heterosexism. And so for me, I saw how that conflict that I had with that young person, that we all had, it was an opportunity that led to transformation. And that if I would have shot it down, if I would have said, you know what, shut up. How dare you say something like that? And not let him go through the process that we had created for those young people, it wouldn't have been an opportunity. I would have ended it before it could begin. And instead, that conflict turned into an opportunity for this young person to become a leader in their community. And my friends, what I have found time and time again is that transformation is always quicker than indoctrination. That for this young person, it took 14 years for him to become that person with this bigoted opinion, but it took 3 days for the transformation to happen. And I find over and over again that when we allow conflict to be an opportunity and we take advantage of that opportunity to be something good, that this happens over and over again. So that is my first invitation, to view conflict as an opportunity. And my second invitation is to make the decision that it's an opportunity that leads to a gift. For that's what that was, that instance with that young person, is that by viewing it as an opportunity, we as a group at that conference made the decision to allow it to become a gift. And that has happened in life that I have found over and over again. Have you ever had an internal conflict or an internal struggle, or something came up in life that within yourself you felt this pressure or you felt this resistance that was going on, and then you worked through it and you came out the other side and you said, you know what, because of that internal conflict, because of that resistance I met in life, I'm now a stronger person. I had to work through things that I might not have ever worked through, and because of the way I worked through it, it was a blessing. And actually that conflict was a gift. Has that ever happened for you? One time I was on the phone with my dad, maybe a couple weeks ago. We tried to touch base, and he said, Thomas, that's what he calls me. Thomas, how's it going? And I said, Dad, life is amazing. And then he kind of laughed and said, you always say that. Every time I call you, you say life is amazing. What's going on with that? And I said, well, Dad, if you didn't want me to have that kind of attitude, then you're a terrible role model. And he started to laugh. And I told him, I remember this. And I'll share it with you, that my dad was in the hospital and he was having a stem cell transplant. And so they told him he was going to be there for at least 30 days. And so I had to fly home from Florida to help with the family. All of our family had to be all hands on deck for the situation, because it was, if you can imagine, it was scary. And so I called my dad. He was on day 12 of his stem cell transplant. And I said, Dad, how's it going? You know how sometimes, which I hear people who are in those situations hate to hear, where you can hear the worry and sometimes even the pity in people's voices when they ask. And I said, Dad, how's it going? And he said, you want to know what, son? Life is good. I was like, what? He's like, life is so good, son. And I saw how when my dad was in the hospital for 30 days, I even heard him say it, that he said, you know what, this cancer, the stem cell transplant, I'm going to view this as an opportunity. And I saw how he made the decision to turn that opportunity into a gift. And it really was, because I saw how my dad came out of that experience as someone he already was someone who appreciated life, but had an even deeper appreciation for life. And now he's more open. He tells these great stories about his childhood. And even as a family, that we viewed it as an opportunity and turned it into a gift. And at the time, I didn't really have the language that that's exactly what we were doing. But in retrospect, it is, because I saw how we all came together and we got to spend time together in a way we wouldn't have. I would have never been home at that time of the year unless it was for that. And it really was a gift for our family and for my dad. And that was a conscious decision that first started with an attitude of looking at conflict as an opportunity, and then making the decision that we can have this conflict become a gift. And I saw it happen, and I continue seeing it happen over and over again in my life, which leads me to my third invitation that I would like you to give consideration, which is this. If we're going to view conflict as an opportunity and make the decision to let it become a gift, then I want to invite you to consider that is a worthy journey. That doing that, it is worth your effort. That conflict itself, working through it, is a worthy journey. Because I'm not saying it's going to be easy. not saying that by having this mindset shift, that every time you work through conflict, it's going to be as fun as eating chocolate cake. It's not what I'm saying, because it's not. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes it's really uncomfortable. But all growth, well, I don't want to say all, but a lot of growth is. And my invitation is to consider it a worthy journey, because the results, the outcome, what you can get when you go through it is amazing. And we live in a time right now of polarization. We live in a time of dichotomies where everybody want to make things sound binary. We live in a time where people just yell at each other without listening, and we close our ears and just yell. And we live in a time of online trolls and people yelling at each other and disconnect. And it just seems to be getting worse and worse and worse. And we can see the outcome of that is more and more people deciding that you're not worth my time, and going from you're not worth my time, that you're not worth life. And more we see people being dehumanized, and less do we see connection. And through that, we all start to view conflict. We start to get a core belief of what conflict is, and that it's just not worth it, so I'm going to unfriend you. It's just not worth it, so I'm not going to talk to you anymore. It's just not worth it, so I'm going to tune out. It's just not worth it, so I'm going to do this. And instead, what I want to invite us is that it is worth it. It is worth working through the conflict, because it can be a gift, as we've already talked about. I know for me, in my intimate relationships with my partner, Adora, I think of all the times that we've worked through conflict together. Specifically, I think of how, for me, maybe you can relate to this, that before I met Adora, my life was all about my work. My work was my passion, and it was my life. If I had the choice between work and sleep, I chose work. Between work and eating, I chose work. Work and having fun, I said work is fun. It was work, 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 work. Rihanna knows what I'm talking about. And so when you start to enter into an intimate relationship with somebody where your time is no longer just yours, that can have an impact. And so I know it wasn't always easy for my partner to say, can we have a conversation? Especially when I was going at life with the speed of a high fast train. It's hard to step in the middle of that and say, can we talk? And some of those conversations were uncomfortable, because they invited me to reflect upon my core values. But going through that journey together was absolutely worth it, because not only has it made us closer as a couple, but it's made me an even better person, an even happier person, someone who has more joy and balance in my life. And it was because together we decided to walk this journey of using conflict as an opportunity, and making the decision that it's going to be an opportunity that leads to a gift. My friends, our vision is what drives us to try something new. And for a lot of us, I'm inviting us to do something new, in that looking at conflict different than what we're used to. And so I'd like you to, before you go to bed tonight, think of, what is your vision for conflict? Here's my vision. I envision that when we embrace that conflict is an opportunity, that we can decide to make a gift, and it's worth working through. When we really do that, we can have a world where everyone's treated with respect and dignity, where everyone's needs can be met. I envision that when we do that, we'll have a world free from oppression and discrimination, a world where there is love, joy, and expression. That is what I vision. That is why, for me, this is worth it. And I want you, for yourself, if this is something that you want to try, get yourself a vision and remind yourself of it. Strengthen it, because that vision, when it gets tough, will be the fuel that keeps you going. And so, my friends, I appreciate this time getting to share this with you. It's been an absolute joy getting to talk about something that is passionate to me. And I want to leave you by reminding you and inviting you to reflect once again that conflict itself is neither negative nor positive. It's neutral. It is an opportunity, and we get to decide what is it an opportunity for? And that walking that journey is worth it. And when we embrace those things, we can let go of the fear that we associate with conflict. Because it's true, I can't control when conflict arises in my life. I can't control who I have conflict with. But what I can control is my belief about what conflict means and what it can lead to. And knowing that it can lead to a gift. So my friends, thank you so much for this opportunity. And as always, I'm wishing you peace and blessing.